And I'm going to borrow a little bit from someone, my friend Ali turned me on to Dr. Patrice Berry. And I'm going to tell you a little story about a girl and about a woman and about who we think we are versus who we really are, which is one of my favorite heartfelt topics. So a couple weeks ago, I was driving in a car with a woman who happened to be my mom. And it was one of those rare occasions where she decided to just open up. And this time was in kind of a new way for her. She really hit some really hot topics that were both beautiful and that she was able to do that, and of course painful too, and very enlightening. So the first story is when she was a little girl, and keep in mind that first of all, some of this might be a bit graphic, and this takes place probably, I'm assuming, during the Great Depression, that era of time. She was born in 1928, so I think that sounds about right. Anyways, so the first story is her as a little girl who would fall down, and when she'd fall down, she'd get up, and the nuns, the sisters at school and church, and her aunts would tell her that she was a bad girl, and that's why she fell down, that their version of God was punishing her for how bad she was. So she began to believe this story, and she also began to fall down more than normal, kind of doing a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I'm bad and you fall down when you're bad, I'll fall down because I believe that I'm bad. By nature, I am bad. And what made things a little more twisted was that not only was God punishing her for being bad, but was also taking the life force from her. So when her knees would bleed, like any child's knee would bleed after falling, normally you go and you look for a kiss on the boo-boo or a Band-Aid or something along those lines, some sort of comfort. And the way she explained it to me, at least, was that it was God taking the life force from you, taking it from her for being so bad. And she went on to believe this. I think she still believes this, actually, to this day, that she is just inherently bad, even though she knows better. Now, the second part of this story, which is important because it relates to this first part. The second part of the story is of her as a teenager who never had anyone explain to her what a period was, what becoming a woman was, what body changes were like. And she was pretty clear about this story, and I've never heard this one before, where she was sitting at the dining table about 6 o'clock in the evening, and she just started to bleed. And she had no idea what was going on. No one ever explained what a first period was, what it was like to experience the very normal changes that a woman's body goes through at that age. And she naturally freaked out. So let me illustrate. First of all kids fall down. All kids scrape their knees. It's part of the experience of learning how we function as human beings, what the body does. And the same thing with menstruating. It's just part of, who young girls becoming women do. It's just how we are. It's how we're made. But she didn't know that. And so she did what made sense. She just went to the bathroom and she just freaked the F out, crying and looking down at her blood-soaked dungarees, and just crying and convinced that God was going to take her from the planet that evening. Because if your knee's bleeding, were God taking the life from you for being so bad, then most certainly this amount of blood coming from her body meant that she was going to die that evening. Now, of course, this sounds outrageous to some people, but these are the types of messaging that many of us receive to some degree, most of us to a lesser degree. And what the intervention that evening ended up being was her auntie coming in and throwing a dirty cleaning rag at her and essentially telling her to just clean herself up, get over it. You're a woman, and that was it. There was no conversation that evening about becoming a woman or what the cycle was like, and that it was normal. And there was no, I'm sorry, no one talked about this with you, and I got a feeling some of these stories like this probably are not that unusual for a lot of women of that era. Mind you, that's not that long ago either. But it both broke my heart and it opened my heart. Now, my mom and I certainly have a history of complexities, and it's always a teeter-totter of understanding, forgiveness, anger, and all these poles from both of us. They've softened over the years. But these stories allowed me to have really profound compassion, really to experience a beautiful moment of both horror and sorrow for this little girl, and also to really understand what made that girl become the woman she became, and why that woman ended up raising children the way she did or making the decisions she did. I think the important thing to realize is that everyone's got a story. We've all got a story. We all got a story. We all got our shit. We all got our highlights. We all got our glory. But a lot of us have wiring that was formed at a very, very, very critical age of understanding who we are, that helped shape our fears, that helped shape who we become as adults. Whether they're true or not doesn't matter. It's the information that's coming in, and as faulty as it is, it sticks. It can stick. And it's different for everyone, of course. But what the story is really about is the influence of other people and the power those messages have on us. For this innocent little girl who fell down like any other child falls down, to grow up through teen years and adult years really thinking she was just a really awful, awful person that God wanted to take the life from. Naturally, that created an adult who made some really not so great decisions. And me understanding that part of her story really allowed me to have more compassion for some of the things that took place in our own messaging, the messaging we received, that intergenerational messaging that took place. Now, of course, when I talk about understanding, it's not excusing. We are all accountable for all the actions and words we use in our lives. But what it does is it allows us to, when we really understand someone, where they're coming from, or at least make an attempt to, even with just bits and pieces, it gives us an opportunity to create a much more whole understanding of that person. And the last point is none of us are born with self-loathing. None of us are born with overwhelming fear. None of us are just born rageful or seeking self-destruction or come into this planet saying, I'm going to make poor decisions. Those are all things that are conditioned in and wired in, and it's just true. It's just the way it is. But on the flip side of that is we can rewire ourselves. We can write new narratives. We can understand people, even the people who've really hurt us or we've had struggles with or we just never understood them. If we choose to understand them, we can. And it's not only about understanding the other person. Most people are a mirror of ourselves. And I think what I experienced that day was also a forgiveness and understanding of myself as much as it was of her. And through that, I was able to let go of so much stuff I didn't even know I held on to. I didn't even know it existed. It was so deep. I didn't even know it existed. But understanding other people is really a terrific key for creating movement and creating better lives for everyone around us. It just dissipates the tension. And sometimes it takes some work. It's not always easy right off the bat, even when it's our own self-work and we're trying to understand our own habits. But I would like to encourage everyone to rewrite their own stories, examine where some of the negative thoughts and behaviors come from, because it is not from your true self. It never was. You're never faulty. You're never broken. You're never born fearful or self-sabotaging or any of those things. So we live in an amazing time, and I wish everyone the very, very best in their own self-discovery. And thanks for listening to this little story.